Part 2. The tradition the elders couldn't understand. Vaylor's damaged vessel drifted deeper into the unknown system. The yellow star burned unevenly, violent and alive, unlike the stable suns of elder space. Around it moved several small planets, one filled with noise, movement, and heat. The ship's system struggled to translate the signals. They were not clean or ordered. They overlapped, repeated, and changed tone without pattern. Emotional data, raw and uncontrolled. Vaylor felt unease. Not fear in the elder sense, but a tightening inside his core. This species did not communicate like the others. They did not hide their feelings behind silence. The elders had warned of such life forms. Short-lived, chaotic, and self-destructive. Species that burned bright and died fast. They were never meant to matter. Vaylor sent a weak identification pulse. It was not a greeting. It was a survival reflex. The response came quickly. Multiple signals locked onto his ship. Tracking beams surrounded him, steady but restrained. They could have destroyed him in seconds. They did not. His vessel was pulled toward a metal structure orbiting the blue planet. Crude in design, rough at the edges. Yet strong, layered, and constantly repaired. Inside the station, Vaylor observed humans for the first time. They moved with urgency. They touched each other often. Hands on shoulders, arms linked, heads pressed close. The data made no sense. They shared space, shared pain, shared responsibility. Individuals were not isolated units. They were tied together by invisible bonds. Vaylor learned of their losses. Wars that scarred their planet. Cities destroyed and rebuilt again and again. Millions dead, yet the species endured. Instead of erasing memory, they carried it. They built rituals around it. Ceremonies of grief, of union, of promise. The elders would have erased such behavior. Emotion led to inefficiency. Attachment led to weakness. Yet these humans grew stronger after every collapse. Vaylor accessed deeper records. He discovered something the elders never studied closely. A human tradition older than their space travel. Bonding through choice. Standing beside another not because of design, but because of will. Humans formed pairs, families, and groups. They stayed even when escape was possible. They endured hunger, loss, and fear together. Not because logic demanded it, but because separation hurt more than suffering. Vaylor felt the forbidden pressure rise again. This time sharper. This time undeniable. The elders arrived soon after. Their fleets emerged from folded space like silent gods. Cold and perfect, untouched by loss. They observed the humans with disdain, classified them as emotionally compromised, declared their traditions wasteful and dangerous. Vaylor listened as the elders focused on one detail. Human bonding rituals tied to survival, sacrifice, and reproduction. They called it primitive, a flaw that would limit their expansion forever. The elders announced a universal examination, a trial to expose emotional weakness. They would test the humans openly, before the entire galaxy. Vaylor understood the meaning behind the words. This was not study. It was judgment. The elders believed the outcome was already known. Emotional species always broke under pressure. They always failed when pushed beyond reason. As preparations began, Vaylor looked back at the planet below. The lights of cities glowing like fragile sparks. Each one filled with lives that refused to stand alone. For the first time since his world died, Vaylor felt fear not for himself, but for others. And deep beneath that fear, a quiet thought formed. If these humans survived what was coming, then the elders' oldest truth might be the galaxy's greatest lie. Part 4. When the galaxy laughed. The galaxy watched the trial like distant spectators. Worlds far from Earth tuned in through filtered data streams. They saw charts, numbers, and cold summaries. Not faces, not tears. To them, humanity was already failing. The elders released public reports. Human systems collapsing. Population losses rising. Emotional instability at extreme levels. Other species reacted with quiet amusement. Some with relief. Some with mild pity. They had seen this story before. A young species meets pressure. Emotion overwhelms reason. Extinction follows. The laughter was not loud. It was worse than that. It was dismissive. Humanity was discussed as a lesson. A warning about attachment. About caring too much. The elders reinforced this belief. They broadcast images of human suffering. Crowded shelters. Empty skies. Broken cities. They called it proof. Valor watched from the edge of the data flow. His status reduced. His influence gone. He recognized the pattern. This was how the elders justified destruction. By turning lives into examples. The pressure increased again. Entire human fleets lost navigation control. Ships vanished into deep space. Rescue signals went unanswered. On Earth, seasons shifted without warning. Floods swallowed coastlines. Fires turned forests into ash. The elders marked the phase as terminal decline. Humans were expected to fracture now, to hoard resources, to abandon the weak, to fight each other for survival. Some did. Violence appeared in the data. Fear drove desperate acts. The galaxy focused on those moments, pointing to them as confirmation. But Valor saw something else. In the shadow of chaos, human networks began to change. Small groups formed where large systems failed. Neighbors became guardians. Strangers became family. Humans shared stories of loss openly. They spoke names of the dead instead of erasing them. They carried memory like a burden they refused to drop. The elders ignored this. It did not fit their models. Human casualty numbers kept rising. Yet human resistance did not vanish. They rebuilt without orders, without central command, without hope of reward. Valor watched humans return to ruins, dig through debris with bare hands, refuse evacuation to stay with the injured. From the elder view, this was madness. Risk without gain, effort without efficiency. Alien commentators mocked the behavior, calling it emotional noise. A species wasting energy on the already lost. The laughter spread wider. The galaxy believed the trial was over in all but name. Humans were broken. They just had not realized it yet. Then the data slowed. Human survival curves flattened, then stabilized. The elders assumed sensor error. They recalibrated, ran the numbers again. The result did not change. Despite loss, despite hunger, despite isolation, humans were holding their ground. Valor saw humans refusing evacuation orders to maintain supply lines. He saw medics staying behind with no chance of rescue. He saw messages passed hand to hand, not commands, but encouragement. The galaxy laughed less now. Confusion replaced amusement. The elders dismissed it as delayed collapse. A final surge before extinction. Valor was no longer convinced. He remembered his own world. How his people had shut down when loss exceeded logic. How they had accepted the end quietly. Humans did not accept it. As the elders prepared the next phase. A phase designed to remove the last chance of recovery. Valor understood the truth forming beneath the numbers. The galaxy was laughing at a species that was still learning how to fight. And the most dangerous part, they had not even started fighting back yet. Part 5. The moment the galaxy was wrong. The elders initiated the final phase with quiet confidence. This was the point where all emotional species failed. Hope would be removed. Recovery would be denied. Survival would become mathematically impossible. They collapsed remaining trade paths. They cut long-range signals entirely. Human worlds were left blind and alone. From the elder view, this was mercy. A clean end. No prolonged struggle. Valor watched the data streams tighten like a closing fist. Human reserves dropped to critical levels. Medical supplies ran out. Power grids failed completely in several regions. By all logic, this was the end. The elders waited for surrender signals. They waited for mass extinction curves. They waited for silence. Instead, something changed. Human activity spiked. Not in panic, but in coordination. Without central command, humans adapted. Local groups took control of survival. Engineers rewired machines never meant to last this long. Farmers grew food in poisoned soil. Doctors worked without rest, without tools, without promise of survival. The data showed exhaustion beyond safe limits. Bodies breaking. Minds pushed past stability. Yet humans continued. Valor saw something the elders could not measure. Humans were no longer fighting to live. They were fighting so others would not face the same pain. Messages spread through broken systems. Not orders. Not demands. But shared resolve. Hold on. Stay standing. If you fall, someone else will carry it forward. Human ships began moving again. Damaged, underpowered, held together by manual repairs. They did not retreat. They placed themselves between danger and the weak. The elders adjusted projections. Human resistance should have failed by now. Loss levels were unsustainable. Valor recognized the pattern. Humans were doing what his people never did. They accepted death as a cost. not an end. Human units held positions with no extraction plans. They fought storms, vacuum, and hunger, not because they believed they would survive, but because surrender would erase meaning. The elders attempted to correct the anomaly. They increased pressure again. Energy spikes, orbital disruptions, system-wide strain. The response stunned them. Human lines bent, but they did not break. Instead of collapse, human resistance hardened. Pain did not slow them. Loss did not stop them. The elders began losing control of the trial, not because humans overpowered them, but because humans refused to behave as expected. Valor saw the moment clearly. When elder analysts stopped speaking, when silence replaced certainty, the numbers showed it. Humans were no longer declining. They were stabilizing under conditions meant to cause extinction. The galaxy noticed. Spectator species fell silent. The laughter vanished. Confusion spread. How could a weak species endure this? How could emotion produce strength instead of collapse? Valor felt the forbidden pressure inside him surge. This was not logic. This was something older. Human stubbornness. The refusal to accept the end. The choice to stand even when standing meant pain. The elders realized too late. This trial had revealed something dangerous. Humans were not surviving despite suffering. They were surviving because of it. As human forces began pushing back against collapsing zones, reclaiming space thought lost, the elders issued a containment alert. For the first time in galactic history, a trial was no longer considered safe. Valor understood the truth with chilling clarity. The galaxy had not broken humanity. It had forged it. And now, humanity was about to take its first step forward, not as victims, but as something the elders could no longer control. Part 3. The trial meant to break them. The elders did not wait long. They never did. Across the galaxy, the announcement spread in cold, perfect waves. A universal trial would begin. Not a war, not an invasion. A test. They said it was fair. They said it was controlled. They said no species would be harmed beyond recovery. Valor knew better. He had seen what elder logic called acceptable loss. The trial started without warning. Human systems began to fail one by one. Trade routes collapsed. Navigation signals bent and twisted. Supply lines vanished into empty space. On Earth, the sky filled with strange lights. Satellites fell like burning rain. Power grids failed across continents. Cities went dark. The elders did not strike with weapons. They removed balance. They altered probabilities. They introduced scarcity where none had existed before. Storms grew stronger. Fault lines shifted. Diseases spread faster than expected. From the elder view, this was elegant. No direct violence. Only pressure. They watched from afar, recording heart rates, panic levels, and failure curves. They expected chaos. They expected collapse. Humans suffered immediately. Food shortages spread. Hospitals overflowed. Fear moved faster than information. Valor observed the data streams in silence. Human emotional readings spiked far beyond safe thresholds. Grief, anger, despair. The elders marked this as confirmation. They said the humans were unraveling. Too attached. Too afraid of loss. Then came the separations. Families were cut off from each other. Colonies lost contact with their homeworld. Ships drifted alone in dead space. Survivors believed they were the last. The elders expected surrender. They expected internal collapse. Species turning on themselves to preserve the few. Humans cried. They screamed. They mourned openly. The elders logged this as weakness. Valor felt something twist inside him. The same pressure he felt as his own world died. He recognized the signs. This was the moment elder species usually broke. Human structures failed. Buildings fell. Entire regions were abandoned. Yet something strange appeared in the data. Humans did not isolate. They gathered. In ruins. In shelters. In places with no strategic value. They shared food, even when it meant less for themselves. They stayed with the injured instead of fleeing. They carried the dead instead of erasing them. The elders adjusted the pressure. They increased the strain, pushed systems closer to collapse. More disasters followed. More loss. More pain. Valor saw humans reach breaking points. Bodies exhausted. Minds overwhelmed. Still, they did not quit. They buried their dead. Then stood up again. The elder analysts grew impatient. Human survival rates should have dropped faster. The curve was wrong. They called it delayed failure. Emotional inertia. Nothing more. Valor was no longer sure. He saw humans recording messages for loved ones they might never see again. Not as surrender, but as promise. He saw them swear oaths with no witness but each other. Stay alive. Hold the line. Do not let this be the end. The elders decided to escalate. The next phase would remove hope entirely. As the command was issued, Vaylor understood what was coming. A final pressure meant to force extinction or submission. He looked at the fragile blue world, already bleeding, still standing. And for the first time, Vaylor feared not for the humans, but for the elders, because the species they were trying to break had not yet learned how to surrender. Part 1. The galaxy's oldest lie. The galaxy believed it had already learned every truth that mattered. For millions of cycles, the elders ruled the stars with calm minds and cold laws. They said emotion was a disease, and survival belonged only to those who removed it. Logic was worship, pain was erased, and memory was edited until nothing hurt anymore. Vaylor was born into this belief. He was an observer of worlds, trained to watch without feeling. His people lived on a crystal planet that floated near a dying blue star. The planet was perfect, shaped by reason and balance. No hunger, no love, no grief, only order. Then the lie broke. The war came without warning. Not from outside the galaxy, but from within it. An elder faction decided Vaylor's world was inefficient. Its resources were better used elsewhere. The decision was made in silence, without anger, without regret. The sky burned. Orbital rings shattered like glass. Energy storms ripped cities into light and dust. Vaylor watched entire districts vanish in seconds. Data streams filled his vision, numbers replacing screams. His family was erased in a single calculation. Their existence ended with a clean result. 0. Vaylor felt something forbidden stir inside him. Not panic, not logic, but something heavy and sharp. His training told him to suppress it. But the feeling grew stronger as evacuation failed. Ships collided, systems shut down, and escape routes closed. He ran, not because logic told him to, but because something inside refused to accept the end. As the planet cracked apart, Vaylor launched in a damaged scout vessel. Behind him, his world folded into itself and vanished into the star's gravity. A civilization erased without mourning. The galaxy barely noticed. Drifting alone, Vaylor reviewed the elder records. They said destruction was natural, that survival was about efficiency, that those who fell were weak by definition. Yet Vaylor could not erase the images. The broken towers. The silent void where his people once existed. The weight inside him did not fade. For the first time, he questioned the law he had trusted all his life. If emotion was weakness, why did it keep him alive? Why did it push him forward when logic said the odds were meaningless? His ship limped across uncharted space. Sensors flickered and failed. Food reserves dropped to critical levels. Every system told him survival was unlikely. That was when the anomaly appeared. A small yellow star. An unstable system ignored by elder maps. Primitive signals leaked into space. Crude transmissions, chaotic and emotional. Vaylor studied the data with detached curiosity. The species was new, divided, inefficient. They fought among themselves, mourned loudly, and bonded in strange ways. By every elder metric, they were weak. The records labeled them insignificant. A minor species from a backwater world called Earth. Vaylor should have moved on. There was nothing useful there. Nothing logical. Yet something inside him reacted again. The same forbidden pull he felt when his world died. The same pressure that refused to let go. As his ship drifted closer, alarms began to sound. Unknown signals locked onto his vessel. Not weapons, not shields, but something else entirely. Vaylor realized too late that he had crossed into their space. And whatever these humans were, they had already noticed him. Part 6. The Price of Never Surrendering. The elders ended the trial without ceremony. No announcement of failure. No apology. Across the galaxy, pressure fields vanished. Trade paths reopened. Signals returned. To the galaxy, it looked like mercy. To Vaylor, it looked like fear. The elders called it recalibration. They claimed the test was complete. That sufficient data had been gathered. No one believed them. Human worlds emerged scarred and burning. Cities stood in ruins. Oceans were polluted. Skies carried ash. Billions were gone. Names carved into memory instead of erased. Yet humanity still stood. They did not celebrate. They did not declare victory. They mourned. Across Earth and its colonies, humans gathered in silence. They held rituals for the dead. They rebuilt not because it was efficient, but because giving up was unthinkable. Vaylor observed the aftermath closely, expecting collapse now that the pressure was gone. It never came. Human systems reorganized. Slower, rougher, but stronger. They planned with loss in mind. They built redundancies not just in machines, but in people. No single leader. No single failure point. The elders issued a new classification. Humanity was no longer insignificant, no longer harmless. They were labeled unpredictable. Other species watched in silence. Fear replaced curiosity. They had seen advanced civilizations fall under far less strain. They had seen logic-based empires collapse cleanly, quietly. Humans did not collapse quietly. They screamed. They cried. They bled. And they kept moving. The elders studied the data one last time. Human emotional capacity exceeded measurable limits. Pain tolerance beyond projection. Sacrifice levels incompatible with rational self-preservation. Their final conclusion was simple. Humans could not be controlled through pressure. Vaylor stood before the elder archives. His status unchanged. His grief unresolved. He understood now why his people had vanished. They had accepted loss as the end. Humans did not. To humans, loss was fuel. Memory was strength. And death was not something to fear, but something to defy through action. The elders withdrew their fleets from human space. Not as allies. Not as protectors. But as observers who no longer felt safe interfering. A silent rule spread through the galaxy. Never test humanity again. Because if pushed, they would not surrender. They would adapt. They would endure. And they would remember who caused their pain. Vaylor made a choice the elders would never approve. He set his course toward Earth. Not to warn them. They already knew. But to learn. To understand how a weak species survived what should have ended them. How they turned suffering into resolve. And why the galaxy's oldest lie had finally been exposed. Emotion was not weakness. Emotion was why humans were still alive. And as Vaylor's ship entered human space, one truth echoed across the stars. Any civilization can rule in peace. But only one kind survives the end. A species that never surrenders.